Next week, Dan, Return of the Akrons.
I think it's the Archons. It's like Return of the People from Akron, Ohio. I mean, you could pronounce it Archons, the Return of the Archons. Yeah, Dana, but what the fuck do I know?
Welcome to Damn It, Jim, the podcast. My name is Dana Smith, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Dan Calzaretta. Hey, Dan, how are you tonight?
Dana, doing great. Had a great Thanksgiving. We had a lot of company here, had a lot of good food, drank a lot of good beer, played a lot of fun games, and now everyone is gone and the house is very, very quiet. Yeah, we had a great time. How about you for Thanksgiving? What did you guys do, and did you have a good time?
Oh, yeah, I had a great time. Was with my wife's family. Brother-in-law made the turkey. Everybody brought dishes. It was really tasty. Didn't have anything that was bad, anything I spit back out on my plate. It was all wonderful. Okay, do you want to get on to the episode? Actually, we need to talk about our Thanksgiving holiday special.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I understand that you got some responses to that.
Got a couple of emails. One was our good friend Bob from Chicago. Said he loves what we're doing and to keep it up. He laughs very hard at the show, and sometimes I think he even laughs at things that are supposed to be funny. That's a plus. We did have a lot of messages through Facebook. Here's a list of some of the comments that we got. And
oh boy, I can't wait for this, Dana.
All positive.
Oh, okay.
Keep it going with an exclamation mark. Thanks for your work.
Well, work, that's kind of a generous term, but okay.
You've made this a lot of fun.
Oh,
and that's somebody who didn't really pay attention to Star Trek before they started listening to us.
Oh, great.
Why won't Dan try Jägermeister?
Well, if you've been listening, the answer is hopefully painfully obvious, and I emphasize painful.
It was funny because this followed up pretty closely was, what is Jägermeister?
Oh, my.
So one person wished us a very great Thanksgiving, and they were thankful for their show.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it was nobody that was related to us, which is even better. You guys rock. Mm-hmm. You're making me laugh. Oh. And the last one that I saw that I put in here, my wife and I love your show. Keep going.
Oh, wow. That's all really positive.
And you got a message as well, right?
Yeah, a former neighbor of mine owns a framing shop here in Walla Walla, and one of her customers came in, and she suggested that he listen to the show. When he came in to pick up whatever he was having framed, he said, I binged all the episodes, and now I've got to wait every week for the new episode. So I thought that was kind of nice.
We definitely know how to keep people on the edge of their seats and waiting. So
yeah, on the edge of their seat, as in I'm trying to run away as quickly as possible.
But I got to listen to see what stupid thing they're going to say next. Yeah, so.
I think that's it. Yeah. That's really great, though. The more we do these shows, the more we're hearing from people, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of big-time Star Trek fans out there. When I belong to 8 or 9 Star Trek groups on Facebook, and it's pretty amazing the depth that these people have when it relates to the show.
And the passion, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is my son, who was home for Thanksgiving, Sonny is his name, 26 years old, said that age group, like the mid-20s, is getting back into the original series, which I found interesting.
Is it because of us?
It has to be, Dana. It has to be because of us.
Well, they're the biggest group that listens to podcasts. I'm sure that most of the 26-year-olds have stumbled across our podcast, and that's where they're all getting back into the show.
I hope so. I really do hope so, yeah.
This is Court Martial, which is the 20th episode of the first season. We see the Enterprise, and Kirk says that they passed through an ion storm, and one crewman is dead. They've pulled into Starbase 11 for repairs. Full report of the damages was made to the commanding officer of Starbase 11, Commodore Stone.
Yeah, I really liked this actor, by the way.
I was reading about Percy Rodriguez, who plays Commodore Stone. He has such a great voice. When the Jaws movie was released, he was the narrator for the the commercial.
And one thing I noticed about him, and I don't know if our listeners watch the show. Do they watch it before we watch it? Do they watch it after? I'm not sure kind of how people do this, but if you go back and look at that episode, he doesn't blink ever in the entire episode. Not once.
That's kind of creepy, actually.
It is a little creepy, but he does not blink once. How do you do that?
That's a different kind of intensity.
I blinked already 7 times in this last 3 seconds, I think. In fact, I might just have to close my eyes completely, just like our listeners as they fall asleep listening to this slightly off-topic ramble.
Kirk is in the Commodore's office, and he's going over a copy of his sworn deposition of the events that led to the death of Records Officer Benjamin Finney. Kirk explains that he did wait for the last possible moment, but with the ship on red alert, the ion storm got worse. Kirk had to eject the ion pod containing Finney, sending him to his death.
Now, they never really explain what this pod is and why someone would need to be in it, do they?
I have a lot of issues with the ion pod.
Yeah.
And let's save that for the end of the conversation.
Okay, good. Yeah, but I agree with you there.
Stone is reviewing the computer disk. Jame Finney, Jame spelled Jame, Finney.
Weird.
Daughter of Lieutenant Finney, enters and names Kirk as the man who killed my father. She shrieks at him and breaks down into tears.
Yeah, hold on. I got to talk about this Jame Finney, okay?
Please.
Well, first off, I thought this episode was really good in many ways, but my God, did she annoy me. First, she was dressed like a freaking Oompa Loompa. I mean, that weird dress thing she had on, and she was annoying. I was thinking, put her in the freaking ion pod and send her out. She just annoyed the crap out of me. Second, Jame, what's going on with the name? I mean, I know that Kirk says, Finney was my best friend. He named his daughter after me.
Yeah, could you have named the poodle after me or something? Yeah. It's just...
And what happened to Mrs. Finney? But it's implied that she's dead, right?
Yeah.
I've got a theory. Hold on. Got to get the ramble jar. This may be a ramble. I'm not quite sure. You judge, Dana, if this is a ramble. Okay. I'll say a sentence and you say you say yes ramble, no ramble. Okay. Okay. Lieutenant Finney, was he a lieutenant? It doesn't matter. Finney was a friend of Kirk's. Ramble or no ramble?
No ramble.
Okay.
So far.
Okay. Finney had a daughter named Jame. They named Jame after Jim Kirk because Finney and Jim Kirk were very close friends.
No ramble. Keep going.
Okay. Jame is the love child of Kirk and Mrs. Finney.
I think Kirk would have had better looking daughter.
Oh my God.
She was cute in a kind of homely way. You know, I mean,
in a kind of an Oompa Loompa way.
She will maybe look better if she was blue.
So I think this is I really believe this, and I just made this up now as we're talking about it. I think Jame was the love child of James T. Kirk, and Mrs. Finney, we don't know her name. We could make one up, but why?
Kirk did get around.
But I think we're in agreement that Jame Finney sucks. Totally sucks.
Yeah, not my favorite character. So Commodore Stone has had time now to look at the files, and he accuses Kirk of committing willful perjury. The computer record shows that Kirk ejected the pod before placing the ship on red alert. Stone orders Kirk to remain on Starbase 11 for an official inquiry to determine whether or not a general court-martial is in order. So on the Starbase, we see Kirk and McCoy enter a bar, and there's several officers in there from Kirk's graduating class. He goes through and names them by name, and they all kind of eye Kirk coolly.
In that bar, there is a definite feeling where people are turning their backs on Kirk. They don't really want to be seen talking to him because the rumor mill has started, right? He is responsible for Finney's death.
That's the whole purpose of that scene, I think, and to show that he's kind of on his own. And, of course, McCoy gets a drink right away. And before Kirk can, I think, even sample a drink, he walks out of the bar to avoid getting in a fight. So he walks out, he bumps into another officer, and we see this woman entering from the other side. And this is Areel Shaw.
But Kirk doesn't see her because he bumps into this guy. She saw him, but he didn't see her.
Of course, McCoy sees her, and he gets up and introduces himself. McCoy states that was Captain James T. Kirk. She says, yes, I recognized him. And McCoy introduces himself as one of the last of his friends in these trying times. She says she's an old friend of Kirk, and we all know what that means.
Yes, we do.
And McCoy says,
all of my old friends look like doctors. All of his look like you.
It's a good line. That was a good line.
Oh, yeah. So McCoy suggests that she joins him for a drink, as Kirk will need all the friends he can get.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to Stone's office, and he's conducting the inquiry regarding Finney's death.
And in the office, it's just Commander Stone and Kirk, right?
Yes. And they talk about the fact that Kirk was good friends with Finney, and they were both assigned to the USS Republic. While they were on duty, Finney had left a circuit open to the atomic matter piles? Or was it files?
It was piles.
I listened to it a couple times. I thought he said piles.
Yeah, I mean, I've had an atomic pile a few times, but usually because I had some spicy food. But no, it was the atomic piles for sure.
And that the circuit should have been closed. In another 5 minutes, Kirk reports, the Republic could have self-destructed with all hands. Kirk had logged the incident, and forever after that, because Finney was reprimanded for it and added to his record, he blamed Kirk for his lack of advancement in Starfleet. So then they start talking about the ion storm, and Kirk says he chose Finney to occupy the ion pod solely because he was next on the duty roster. Finney entered the pod just before the Enterprise reached the leading edge of the storm. Kirk signaled yellow alert.
So it was yellow alert to begin with, and then he sends Finney into the pod for reasons we still don't understand, to take readings, we're assuming. But he tells Finney, hurry up because I might have to go to red alert. And if I do, then I got to eject the pod.
Yeah, exactly. And then he alerted Finney to exit the pod. Kirk said he delayed even longer before finally ejecting the pod. Stone reminds Kirk that the logs show he ejected the pod before signaling red alert. Kirk cannot explain that, but says it is next to impossible that the computer is wrong. So Commodore Stone stops the recording and suggests perhaps stress and time as a commanding officer on the Enterprise have worn Kirk down. You made a mistake. And Kirk takes exception to Stone's comment, and then Stone tries to placate him and says, if you report that this was an accident, lead to ground assignment. If Kirk doesn't admit responsibility, Stone says it would smear Starfleet if a starship captain were to be court-martialed.
Stone at this point, Dana, is like trying to help Kirk, but really his main goal is to save Starfleet from getting a black eye, but he's kind of throwing a lifeline to Kirk and saying, look, here's the evidence. The computer says it. You've admitted that the computer says this is what happened. You say it didn't happen that way. Maybe you were stressed out. Let's just give you a ground assignment. We'll make this all go away.
Yeah, and Kirk even says,
so that's the way we do it now. Sweep it under the rug and me along with it. Not in your life. I intend to fight.
Then you draw a general court.
Draw it. I demand it. And right now, Commodore Stone, right now.
Kirk is basically saying that I know what I did, and I don't care what the computer says.
Yeah, exactly. And again, during this is a pretty tense scene. We've got a lot of close-ups on Kirk. We've got a lot of close-ups on Commander Stone. Once again, Stone does not blink at all during any of this, which I don't know why I find that so fascinating that the actor wouldn't blink, but he doesn't blink. Maybe he couldn't blink. Do you think there's any kind of like medical condition where people can't blink? I don't know. A blinkophosia, I don't know.
You're married to a doctor. Why don't you run upstairs and ask her this question?
Because two things. One, I'd have to run upstairs. And number two, I have Google right here. So I'm going to ask Google. It's the Mobius syndrome. It's a rare neurological condition that primarily affects the muscles that control facial expression and eye movement. Yeah, so apparently there is a thing.
Haven't you ever had a baby that just stares at you and doesn't blink?
No. I mean, my dog does it, which is weird. I've tried to teach my dog to blink. Have you ever done it? Like, you've got some pets. Have you ever tried to teach your pet to wink?
Never even considered it.
Yeah, no, I thought it was. So I will spend minutes, looking at my dog and then winking my left eye or winking my right eye and seeing if it does the same thing. And it does. I mean, totally by accident and never, you can never predict it. But yeah, so if any listeners have been able to teach their animals to blink, let us know. Anyway, so yeah, the dude does not blink. I think it's just he's a trained actor and he just doesn't blink.
So Kirk goes back to the bar. As he enters, he sees Areel Shaw Shaw sitting at a table, and several of the other officers in the room are kind of watching him. Again, don't look happy. I didn't look and see if it's the same officers that were in there before, because it really makes me wonder what these guys are doing for Starfleet if they're always in the bar. But
well, it would be like if you or I were in Starfleet. That's what our job would be. So what do you do for Starfleet? Well, I'm an officer. Well, yeah. And you, well, I hang out in the bar to, make sure everything's okay.
And sooner or later, there'll be a starship that needs a captain or somebody on it. So Areel holds out both of her hands, and Kirk takes her hands and kisses her hands very gentlemanly.
Yeah.
And then he sits with her and they talk a little bit, and he says something like, I should have felt your presence here, like static in the air. He says, you look fabulous. How long has it been? And she says, 4 years, 7 months, and an odd number of days. Not that I'm counting. She said, things have changed for you. And Kirk says he didn't want to talk shop. He's just like really putting on the charm.
So Dana, she's trying to talk to him seriously about what's going on. She's heard about the court-martial. Everyone in the bar knows about the court-martial, right? And he just wants to kind of flirt.
Yeah. And she's telling him that she works for the judge advocate's office, and rumors suggest that Kirk is not an innocent man.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks if she can defend him, and she gives him the name of another lawyer who can help him. And when Kirk says, how do you know so much about the prosecution's case? She states, because Jim Kirk, my dear old love, I am the prosecution.
Now, Dana, hold on. I've watched enough Law and Order to know that, there's a conflict of interest here.
It's unethical to sit and have drinks and talk to the person that you're prosecuting.
Yeah, and kind of giving him some suggestions of how the prosecution's going to handle this case.
Yeah, and she says, I will do my very best to have you broken out of the service in disgrace. So Kirk enters his quarters and he finds his room filled with books. And there's a man at his table writing notes.
And the books are everywhere, right? They're on the table, they're on the chairs, they're on the couch, they're everywhere.
So Kirk asks about the books, and the man says, don't you like books? And he argues books are where the law is.
Do you want to know the law, the ancient concepts in their own language? Learn the intent of the men who wrote them?
You have to be either an obsessive crackpot who's escaped from his keeper or Samuel T. Cogley, attorney at law.
You're right on both counts. Need a lawyer?
I'm afraid so.
Now, we see this guy, Cogley. He is kind of curmudgeonly, hates technology, but, super passionate about the law.
And he even goes over and taps a computer and says, I have one of these, but I never use it.
Yeah.
And, which I found very interesting. What a great concept. The court-martial begins with Commodore Stone presiding. The computer lists off the charges and specifications. Kirk formally pleads not guilty. So Shaw calls Spock to the stand. Spock has a long list of honors and credentials. So the prosecutor starts her questioning, asking if computers can malfunction. And Spock says yes. Then she asks if the computer malfunctioned, and Spock says it is wrong.
She's asking Spock if in this instance, did the computer malfunction, right?
Yes.
And he says the computer, it didn't malfunction, but he says it's wrong, which sets up this question of how is that even possible? If it's not wrong, then how is it malfunctioning?
And she says that that's speculation on your part.
Vulcanians do not speculate. I speak from pure logic. If I let go of a hammer, I need not see it fall to know that it has, in fact, fallen. Human beings have characteristics. It is impossible for Captain Kirk to act out of panic or malice. It is not his nature.
They ask Cogley if he wants to cross-examine. He says no. They call McCoy to the stand. I was surprised how well decorated Leonard McCoy is.
Yeah, he had a lot of commendations. I really liked, by the way, these, they were wearing dress uniforms, all the officers, right? And they had these cool little pins that must have been kind of like medals that people in the military would wear now. And I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I did too. And Kirk has a chest full of medals. Stone does as well. Mm-hmm. So when the computer is done relating all of McCoy's awards and merits and that, Shaw asks, isn't he also an expert in psychology, especially space psychology? And he responds, I know something about it. She asks, if Finney could have hated Kirk for being passed over for the promotion, in turn, wouldn't it make sense that Kirk hated Finney? He states not Captain Kirk. He's not that kind of man.
Right.
She kind of presses him a little bit more and says, but couldn't this have happened, or couldn't this be the case? And he says it is possible. And again, Cogley has no questions.
Which is weird, right? I mean, he would think he'd want to cross-examine these people.
Commodore Stone asks Cogley why he hasn't cross-examined any of the witnesses, and Cogley states he's been waiting to get through this preliminary stuff so he could call Captain Kirk to the stand, which, in my opinion, means he had no clue how a trial works.
Right.
So the next thing we see is Kirk in the chair, and the computer reads off his record, and it just goes on, and the prosecutor concedes that Kirk has an exemplary record. Cogley states, well, I don't want to slow the wheels of justice too much, but then again, I don't want those wheels to roll over my client.
I really love that line, Dana.
Gave me hope that he was a decent lawyer.
Yeah.
So then the list of commendations continues, and finally Cogley stops it, and he asks Kirk directly, was there indeed a red alert before you jettisoned the pod? And Kirk says, yes. Yes, there was. He did not panic under pressure. He says the steps he took were essential to saving the ship.
Given the same circumstances, I would do the same thing without hesitation. Because the steps I took, in the order I took them, were absolutely necessary if I were to save my ship. And nothing is more important than my ship.
So the prosecutor plays back a recording of the event. We see Kirk's hand next to a row of buttons on the commander's chair.
Yep.
Kirk presses the yellow alert button. The storm intensifies, the ship's rocked some. Next, we zoom in on the control panel and we can see it says yellow alert, red alert, and the next button is jettison pod. Next thing we see is Kirk pushes the jettison pod button.
While it's still on yellow alert, apparently.
Yes. Didn't push the red alert button.
Right.
Just pushed the jettison pod.
Yep.
And they freeze on that image and everyone seems startled.
Even Cogley, right? Even Kirk's own lawyer.
Areel Shaw approaches the bench and states the log plainly shows the defendant pushing the jettison pod button and not the red alert button. The emergency did not yet exist. We go back to Kirk and he quietly says, but that's not the way it happened.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty damning evidence, right? It's video evidence. We can see it with our own eyes that Kirk presses the jettison pod button before he presses the red alert button. And that was the whole core of his case, that he did not do that.
So back in Kirk's quarters, we see Cogley and Kirk discussing the case, and Cogley tells Kirk he could have made a mistake. He says, it's not too late. We could change your plea. And Kirk is looking at him kind of in disbelief. And then Spock calls Kirk and reports that his computer search has yielded no results. Kirk says, who knows? You may be able to beat your next captain at chess. Spock shows a questioning look and says, chess. We kind of get the feeling that something's up here.
Yeah, that maybe Spock has some idea of some avenue to pursue.
So on the ship, Spock is playing 3D chess. McCoy comes in and says he had to see it for himself.
And you're sitting here playing chess with a computer.
That is true.
Mr. Spock, you're the most cold-blooded man I've ever known.
Why, thank you, Doctor.
I love that whole exchange. And Spock says, I'm just about to win my 4th match against the computer. McCoy responds that that's not possible. Spock demonstrates, and he says, mechanically, the computer is flawless. The best I should have been able to attain is a draw.
Because he had programmed it. He had programmed the chess game, and so he shouldn't be able to beat the chess game because he programmed it, so it would be a tie.
And yet he's just beat it 4 times.
And McCoy even understands that's not even possible. There's got to be something wrong here.
So back in the courtroom, everybody's back, and the prosecution rests their case. Cogley says the defense also rests.
So Cogley seems like really exasperated. There's nothing he can do. And he's like, well, yeah, we rest our case too.
So then Spock and McCoy enter the courtroom and they speak to Cogley and Kirk. Cogley requests that they adjourn the trial for the moment and says that some new evidence has come into play. Prosecutor says the court is well aware of Mr. Cogley's theatrics. And Cogley goes to her and says, is saving a man's career theatrics? He approaches the bench and says, now we have something human to talk about. Human rights. He says the Bible, the Code of Hammurabi, the Statutes of Alpha 3, Magna Carta, part of the U.S. Constitution. He goes on, these documents all speak of rights, most importantly to be confronted by the witness against him. The most devastating witness against my client is a machine.
My client has the right to face his accuser. And if you do not grant him that right, you have brought us down to the level of the machine. Indeed, you have elevated that machine above us. I ask that my motion be granted. And more than that, gentlemen, in the name of a humanity fading in the shadow of the machine, I demand it. I demand it!
So Cogley is going on a rant about machines, but he wants the court to be adjourned and to reconvene on the ship based on this new information that Spock has just given him.
Correct.
And Shaw's like, no way, we're not doing that. And the Commodore Stone agrees that they should go to the ship and further the investigation and continue the trial there.
The court-martial reconvenes on the Enterprise. Spock explains why he should only be able to achieve a stalemate against the computer, yet he states that he beat it 5 times. Someone has on purpose or accidentally altered the computer. And there's only 3 people who could alter the computer: the captain, Spock, and the records officer, who was Finney.
Now, why? Why?
Yeah. So why only those 3?
Yeah.
Don't they have an IT guy? Kirk explains that the search they did for Finney was a Phase 1 search, a painstaking effort to find crewman who is unable to respond. And Cogley notes that as presupposes that the crewman wishes to be found. And Cogley declares, gentlemen, I submit to you that Lieutenant Commander Ben Finney is not dead.
I thought this was actually a really good part of the show. Like, as far as a trial would go, it's like that evidence that gets given at the last minute that's like the bombshell, right?
Yeah, and it felt like Cogley was doing something a lawyer should do.
Finally. Finally.
Yeah.
He was.
So they come up with this way to find Finney, and they determine that he's down on B deck or near engineering. Kirk orders the area sealed off, and he goes down to find Finney. So in main engineering, Kirk does a search. He's got a phaser. He's walking around looking for Finney, and of course, Finney comes up behind him. Finney goes off and says that the Enterprise should have been his, but that Kirk and Starfleet had conspired to rob him of his own command. Finney aims his phaser at Kirk, but says that Kirk's death would mean too little to the captain, but losing his ship would be far worse. So he says, I've tapped out the primary energy circuits, and he intends to destroy the ship.
So he's sabotaged the ship in some way so it goes into the planet and crashes.
And at this point, Finney looks crazy.
Oh, he does.
He's got like a really sincere craziness about him.
Yeah, I thought this scene actually was really well done, and the actor who played Finney really played it well.
Kirk tells Finney that Jame is on board, and when he tells him this, Finney starts crying. And Kirk basically jumps him. They knocks the phaser out of his hand. They tumble to the floor. Kirk, of course, gets his shirt ripped.
Okay, so this part was great. I was really hoping that was going to be the case, and it indeed was. Not only does he get his shirt ripped, when Finney is fighting with Kirk, Finney picks up this wrench that just happens to be like sitting on the top of, I don't know, some control panel. I just can't imagine Scotty would leave that wrench sitting out there.
They continue fighting, and finally, Kirk manages to knock Finney out.
Mm-hmm.
On the bridge, they say that the power is returning and they're able to stabilize their orbit. Commodore Stone goes over to Ms. Shaw and he says, unless the prosecution objects, the court is dismissed. And Shaw smiles up at him and says, absolutely no objections. So later on the bridge, Shaw is standing inches away from Kirk, and it looks like he's just finished giving her a tour. She asks if she'll ever see him again, and Kirk responds, that depends on the stars. Then she asks if she kissed a Starfleet captain on the bridge of his ship, would it cause a complete breakdown in discipline? Kirk kind of smiles at her and says, let's try. They kiss, and then when they break the kiss, Kirk kind of looks around at the crew. He sees no change, and he says, see, no change. Kirk says goodbye and better luck next time. She responds, she had pretty good luck this time. I lost, didn't I? So Kirk returns to the captain's chair. Spock and McCoy flank him, and Kirk says, she's a very good lawyer. Spock replies, obviously, and McCoy says, indeed she is. And that's how the show ends.
So what's the best part for you, Dana?
Cogley in his books. his dislike for computers. I mean, I think at that time, a real anomaly, and just it sets up a interesting person for Kirk to deal with. What about you?
One of my best parts was Finney's crazed facial expressions when Kirk finds him in engineering. I mean, this guy is a man possessed. I mentioned it earlier. I thought this actor did a great job of just playing crazy. Do you have another best part?
Spock's answers to the questions of the prosecutor when he was on the stand. He was just great. They were perfect Spock replies. And you got another one?
Yeah. When McCoy was really upset that Spock was playing chess and he said to him that you're the most cold-blooded man I've ever known, and Spock replies, "Why, thank you, Doctor." I just thought that was great. What about a worst part for you?
Well, we said we'd get back to this. What the fuck is an ion pod, and why do they need it? Don't they have something they could send out from their ship?
Yeah, like a probe of some kind.
A probe, yeah. So, Dan, do you have a worst moment?
Yeah, Jame Finney, every scene she was in, horrible. How about another worst part for you?
As much as I loved Cogley and the books and the loathing of computers, he sucked as a lawyer.
Yeah, he was horrible.
He was completely unprepared and based his case solely on Kirk's record. Spock's the one that solves the case.
Yeah, not a good lawyer. You're right. Just not a good lawyer. So, Dana, you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the actors who were in this episode.
I want to start off with the person that played Cogley, is Elijah Cook Jr. Many people probably recognize him, think they've seen him in something. This guy was like in movie after movie and TV show after TV show. He was everywhere from the late 30s all the way through until he died. Everything from Kolchak the Night Stalker, and he was in the movie The Maltese Falcon. He was in Sergeant York.
Well, Dana, so I recognize this guy. I mean, when I first saw him, I'm like, I know I've seen this guy. Yeah. And you're right. I watched The Maltese Falcon about a year ago. He played the character Woolmer in The Maltese Falcon.
He's also in Rosemary's Baby. I mean, he was busy for over 60 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Born in 1903. I mean, imagine that.
We talked a little bit about Percy Rodriguez, who played Commodore Stone. Usually played, as I mentioned, authoritative figures, including he played a neurosurgeon on the nighttime show Peyton Place, where he was a lead character and a very prestigious character on that show, which again, you did not see African-American neurosurgeons on regular TV at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I think he, like Nichelle Nichols, probably broke a lot of barriers.
Are we ready to move on to the counts, Dan?
Yeah, let's go to the counts. So, Dana, how about the dead crewman count for this week?
Well, it's kind of tricky. We start with one, and then there are none.
Yeah.
Because it's Finney who died, and yet we find out he was alive.
Yeah, he faked his own death, right? Just like Elvis.
Yeah.
So we've got we've got 0 dead. We are still stuck at 25.5. How about the shirtless Kirk, ripped shirt Kirk count?
Yes, we get another ripped shirt Kirk.
And it was really ripped. Yeah. I mean, this thing was ripped from the collar almost completely down to the torso, wasn't it?
Yeah, practically down to his navel, I think.
Yep, we didn't see the navel. Anyway, so this week we have 1. We've got a total of 9. The he's dead count should be obvious.
0.
Yep, none. So we're stuck at 3. I'm a doctor, not a... I thought we had some opportunities for this, Dana, but how many did we have?
Not one.
You know, I'm a doctor, not a chess master. I thought we could have gotten that easily worked in.
I'm a doctor, not a lawyer.
Oh, that would have been even better, right? But 0 this week, so we're stuck at 1. And so what about our latest count, Dana, that we just implemented a couple weeks ago, the supreme being count?
There's none. Matter of fact, there's some that are quite the opposite of a supreme being in this.
Yeah, so 0. We are at 4. Dana, how about what happened in history when the show came out?
Well, February 2nd, 1967 is when the show aired for the first time. And the Monkees are still at number 1 in the U.S. and in the U.K. with the song I'm a Believer.
That's fascinating to me. I mean, the Monkees are kind of an enigma. Yes, they were kind of a musical group, but they came together not because they met each other and started playing. They were just cast.
A couple times during their career, they knocked the Beatles off the number 1 spot.
Amazing. So they're still number 1 when the show debuted.
And I believe that's at least 3 weeks that's happened.
Yeah.
The American Basketball Association was formed, and a lot of people forget about it. We only have the NBA these days. 10 years later, they would finally merge and join the NBA.
Interesting.
Next week, Dan, Return of the Akrons.
I think it's the Archons. It's like Return of the People from Akron, Ohio. I mean, you could pronounce it Archons, the Return of the Archons. Dana, what do we got going on for next week?
Dan, it's Return of the Archons.
All right. Well, hey, I had a great time tonight. I'm glad we're back from our little Thanksgiving break, although we still did an episode for Thanksgiving, but actually talking about one of the Star Trek episodes. It's been a lot of fun tonight, Dana.
As always, Dan, I always have a good time doing this, talking about Star Trek, hanging out with you. It's a great way to spend an evening.
And our wives think it's a great way, too, because they don't have to deal with us for, as it turns out now, 2.5 hours. Our listeners are probably thinking, thank God we don't have to listen to the 2.5 hours of these guys.
I bet you there's some listeners out there that are probably like, I feel like I'm missing some of the humor that these guys have. Little do they know.
Little do they know. All right, Dana, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week.
All right, have a good one, Dan. As always, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damn It Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at dammitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on Facebook or Twitter. Make sure to join us next week for the Return of the Archons. For Dan and Dana, have a great rest of your weekend, and remember to live long and prosper.